It's the beginning of February, so I painted this. Here's a better copy of that. You'll be seeing a couple more pieces of fairy art this month in celebration of February, but let's get started with the myth that is actually associated with this painting. This piece is actually inspired by a British poem that was created in the 18th century. Before I relay the story and the poem to you, I just want to let you know that this is a real place. You can actually visit this magical fairy kingdom in real life. If you're lucky enough and you live in the UK, you could probably visit it, I don't know, tomorrow. So this poem is based on the Kensington Gardens. This place used to be the private garden for the Kensington Palace. It was originally a section of Hyde Park, which King Henry VIII created for his own personal hunting grounds. Later on, like 150 years later, in the 1700s, Queen Anne decided she wanted to create a magical, beautiful garden. So that's what she did. She had some landscapers do their thing. And then another queen, Queen Caroline to be exact, decided, I want this garden to be all mine. So she sanctioned it off and she made it just the palace's garden because royals can just do whatever they want. So this place was so magical that Thomas Tickell, yep, that's his name, a very minor poet in 1722, wrote a poem called The Kensington Garden. This was, of course, before the time that the Queen decided that the garden was all hers. People could still go visit the garden, regular people. This frilly as shit poem, it is super frilly and ridiculous, is about 534 lines. It's lengthy. Now, let me grab my glasses and read this. Quote, "Where Kensington high over the neighboring lands, midst greens and sweets, a regal fabric stands, and sees each spring luxuriant in her bowers, a snow of blossoms and a wild of flowers." Okay, so as you could probably see, Thomas Tickell was not the most extensive or famous of poets. In fact, most of his fame is associated with the fact that he was friends from an actual really big deal poet named Joseph Addison. So you kind of get the gist of how the poem sounds. Now let me just break this poem down for you in regular people words. The Kensington Garden was once a fairy realm ruled by the fairy king Oberon, who you see featured in A Midsummer Night's Dream in Shakespeare's work. A royal human boy named Albion was kidnapped by a fairy named Milka and did this changeling bit that we'll talk about another time this month. Milka makes sure that Albion only grows to be maybe a foot tall. So he grows with the fairies in the fairy land with the fairy people. Oberon's daughter Kenna falls in love with Albion, who is now around 19 years old. You can probably see where this story is actually headed because we've seen this theme many times. King Oberon, sneaking around, catches the two being all lovey-dovey with each other, and he decides, no fairy princess of mine shall marry a mortal being, a human at that, especially since she is destined to marry another fairy prince named Azrael, like a fairy guy, not a human guy. And I mentioned earlier that Albion was a royal human, I'm pretty sure. Well, his paternal line goes all the way back to the god, the Roman god, Neptune, the god of the sea. So Albion basically prays for help from Neptune. Please let me be with my fairy princess queen, Kenna, and we could rule the fairy realms together. I love her so much. And Neptune hears his prayers and is like, I am going to, send you an entire army to take over this fairy kingdom. Of course, stories just cannot be that easy. Azriel and Albion, in the midst of this fairy battle, are now at this point where they are going to duel. Azriel, being a fairy, an immaterial being, he apparently fakes all of his injuries, and I don't even know why they're dueling in the first place, because he can't feel a thing. He's a fairy, after all. Now, Albion, on the other hand, any strike that Azriel makes and lands on Albion is fatal, because he's a human and can feel everything. So it's really unfair. Of course, Albion dies in this duel. Azriel is apparently victorious and should win Kenna's hand in marriage. Now, Neptune, because he is of course a Roman god and they don't have any hindsight for some reason, is all mad that one of his royal line is now deceased and was killed by the fairies. So Neptune decides to wipe the entire fairy realm off of the map, making all of the fairies disperse into many places, some rural parts of Britain, just all over the place. Why didn't he do that in the first place if that was so easy? I just don't get it. Kenna, ever devout, loving girlfriend, not yet wife of Albion, does not flee the royal kingdom. She stays. And instead, she takes Albion's body and whisks him up into the first snowdrop. It's this flower here. Over time, Kenna is pleased with the British royal family and asks them if they can create this beautiful garden because she's pleased with them. So please work for me because I'm pleased with you. Sounds reasonable. Albion is also not just the son or a, great grandson of Neptune, but apparently is also a part of the royal British line. So he's royal all over the place. He's got royal blood. He has lots of royal blood to spare. The royal family, as you know, decided to craft this Kensington Garden in memory of Albion. Kenna, every single night, will visit Albion's first snowdrop flower and takes her train of fairies and dances in the Kensington Garden every single night. And I think that's very sweet and cute. I know Valentine's Day is coming up, and I didn't want to do anything too cutesy-wootsy, but apparently I did. It's still very tragic, as most lovers' stories and mythology tend to be. And this one isn't actually a god or a myth, it is a poem. So I wanted something just a little different for February. And that is basically the story of the Kensington Garden, the big fairy epic that I never knew about, and maybe you didn't either. And now you do. It is by Thomas Tickell, and you can find the entire poem in the description down below. If you like videos like these, make sure to subscribe and to comment down below. Stay tuned for the rest of February. We're going to be covering a couple other fae creatures in the month. Might be shorter videos, probably not an extensive myth video, but hey, February celebration every day during February. Here is this month's art challenge submission from Discord by Lotto. Make sure to follow them on Instagram, which is right here. You can join us over on our Discord channel. It's all in the description down below. Come join me on my socials on Instagram, on Facebook, and on TikTok at Kaiti Draws. You can find a lot of my work over there if you do enjoy my art. Make sure to keep watching if you do enjoy mythology and drawing videos. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.